Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Hannah, and we are going to be, well, this isn't like one of our normal shows. I haven't decided what this is yet. So we're just doing a show. We have two shows today, actually. So we got back-to-back things. So right now, I'm doing this show with Hannah where we're going to be reacting to a horrifying news story. But more horrifying than the news story is the reaction to the news story. So, yeah, I want to thank Hannah for taking time out to join us on this. So, thanks for coming on, Hannah.
Oh, yeah, I am glad to be here.
All right, excellent. And then later on, Allison and Karen are going to be ranting about Canadian politics some more. And I will be hosting the show for them, but I probably won't be speaking, but I will be in the background listening. So I know I'll be looking at my list and checking it twice to see who's been naughty or nice in the comments. But anyway, let us today get into today's stories. And I'm going to ask that you guys please give this stream a like, because if you can give the stream a like, it gives us a little bit of a better chance of reaching new people via the algorithm. So if you don't mind doing that, I'd appreciate it. And shout out to the Rumble gang, which I haven't done that in a little while, so I thought I would do that for them. Okay. So with all that said, let's look at the story. So we have this from the New York Post, and I'll read through some of it, and then we'll look at, but the real story is the Twitter stuff. So, or X, sorry, I keep getting that mixed up. A 24-year-old Australian woman set a friend, not a boyfriend, not a husband, a friend on fire for making a misogynistic remark. An Australian woman allegedly lit her longtime friend on fire because he made a misogynistic remark during a wild night of partying, a court heard earlier this month. Corby Jean Walpole, I'm not really sure if I pronounced that correctly, 24, pleaded guilty in an Albury District Court to the arson attack on Jake Loader, 23, saying she felt overwhelmed by his antagonistic behavior throughout the night before she was finally set off by a sexist remark he made during a house party in New South Wales last year, according to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Loader told Walpole she should stay in the kitchen making scones if she couldn't handle rinking with the boys, which sent the 24-year-old into a rage, the court heard, according to the outlet.
I'm sorry, that's what upset her? That's it?
She should go to the kitchen. Go to the kitchen, it works every time.
He called her fragile, and she got up. She responded by proving that she was fragile.
Yes, by setting the man on fire. She grabbed a gallon of gasoline from the garage and doused Loader with the flammable substance, waving a lighter at him threateningly, the publication reported. Go on, do it, Loader yelled at his friend, who was drunk and had consumed cocaine, she confessed. Whoa. So she was drunk and on cocaine. Okay.
Walpole excuse.
No, it's not. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying she's already kind of a loser for being drunk and high on cocaine. Yeah. Walpole then touched him with the lighter, setting Loader ablaze, according to the testimony. Loader sustained burns to 55% of his body and had some of his sweat glands burned off. He was put in a medically induced coma for 8 days after the attack, according to a victim impact statement read in court. He required 10 operations and spent 74 days in a burn unit at a Melbourne hospital, according to the statement. The friend cannot step outside into the sun because of the extensive epidermal damage, the statement said. Walpole told the court that she had been abusing drugs and alcohol since a breakup in 2022 and regretted the heartless act. So it was men's fault. I had a breakup and then I got into drugs and alcohol. The firebug claimed during the trial that she was pushed to the edge by Loader, who tried to wrestle with her and was being continuously antagonistic throughout the night, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation reported. To this day, I feel horrible, remorseful, guilty for what I have done to Jake. Not only Jake, but his family, his loved ones, his mutual friends, anyone who has been impacted in this entire case, Walpole told the court, according to the outlet. I find it very hard to believe the injuries that were caused was from my doing. I just don't believe I did the thing that I did. adding, "I would do anything to go back in time." She pleaded guilty to one charge of burning or maiming by using corrosive fluid, the ABC reported. Walpole is due back in court this month for sentencing. Weird, it doesn't count as attempted murder. I don't know how laws work in Australia.
Yeah, because that is, in fact, in my early Reddit days, there were feminists that came into the men's rights subreddit that posted 2 different stories of a parent killing a pedophile to sort of try to figure out a gotcha they could get, on MRAs, like, oh, you said this or you didn't say that or whatever. One of them was an incident where the parent walked in on the pedophile molesting the child. And in that instance, the pedophile was beaten to death. The other one, the pedophile had gone to jail and had been, it's took place in Brazil. And apparently they get some kind of weird weekend furloughs that they get to go home and, do. It's an alien concept to me. It's not something I've ever heard of. I live in the United States, and I don't think people who commit crimes as heinous as what that guy was convicted of get out of jail for much of anything. And if they do, they'd have to have police with them, and they'd have to go right back after the event, like if it was somebody's funeral or something. But this guy was out, and he was walking around downtown, and he was going to go to a bar, and he saw the mother of the victim and asked how her daughter was doing. Right.
Whoa.
And yeah. And so, of course, she, in a fit of temper, went home, got a gas can, went to a gas station, got gasoline in it, and then went to the bar and doused him and set him on fire. And we were confronted with that versus the father who beat the pedophile to death, and told by feminists that because there was a different reaction to what the mother did, it was discrimination. And several of us sorted out the fact that, well, wait a minute. If she had done that, like walk into the room and there he is molesting her daughter and she douses him and sets him on fire, it would be the same as the father beating the guy to death, because that's an instant reaction. But she took like half an hour going home, going to a gas station, getting the materials, going back to the bar. She had time to think about it. That's a different story, right? And I've been in situations not quite like what this woman here is describing, because I don't use cocaine.
You mean like being set on fire after taking cocaine and drugs and
no,
alcohol?
no, like
No?
being
I also have
at
not
an
been in
event,
that situation. Just for
being
the
in an
record.
event where somebody is being antagonistic deliberately.
Mhm.
And I've had that in person. I've had that on live streams. I've had, they've been in situations like that. And you either handle it, in a even-handed manner, at least in a
Mature?
proportional manner to what's being done to you, or you leave. You go. You call an Uber. You leave the live stream. Whatever, right? You don't set somebody on fire. And the fact that she was drunk and on cocaine, that just removes
That's
some of
what
the
she's willing
filters.
to admit to
Yeah.
having been done. Well, we don't know what else she was on, if
Well, the
anything.
thing is,
And the thing
that
is, when
stuff.
she says he was being antagonistic, we don't really know what that means. Like, we have
Well,
to
I mean,
like
when she said he
take
was
her
trying to
word
wrestle
for
with
it.
her and stuff,
Yeah,
if
but
she wasn't up for that, then she should
mhm.
have left, right? If
Yeah.
I'm someplace and there's a guy getting rough with me, I'm not gonna be able to compete with that roughness. I'm either leaving, or if I feel threatened, then I'm gonna fight like an animal. But animals don't use cocaine or don't use
Cocaine
gasoline.
bear?
An animal would
Yeah.
just kick him in the nuts, and get out of there. Like, if he's not threatening and he's not stopping, then you just leave. You don't have to fight back. Like, those are your options. Either he's too threatening and you have to leave with some minor violence that gets you a chance to go, or he's non-threatening and you don't have to use any violence at all. Using extreme violence, like setting somebody on fire, is not just an overreaction. That's what she did. Was she felt dishonored by what he was doing. All right.
Yeah.
And she felt more and more dishonored by what she was doing. And then she attempted an honor killing.
Mm-hmm.
This was an attempted honor killing. If this was something that a man did to a woman for insulting his honor in some way or another, everybody would recognize this was an attempted honor killing. People don't treat it like that, do they?
No, apparently not. Well, the real story here is not this. I mean, this is messed up, but
Yeah, it's messed up.
we host the news show and there are stories like this all the time, similar ones. We just covered a woman in Brazil who murdered her husband, cut off his penis, and then
Mm-hmm.
put it in like a stew and cooked it and ate some of it. And for all we know, she fed some of it to other people, either knowingly or unknowingly. And and it was because he was watching porn. She caught him watching porn. So
Yeah.
this is not unusual, but what
And
and I
when this
mean,
stuff is done to women,
mhm,
feminists talk about it as they use the phrase honor killing, they talk about it as honor killing, and they say the only people who are subjected to honor killings are women. Well, it's because when this stuff happens to men, people think it's funny. People laugh about it, or people say, oh, he deserved it. He did this to her. He did that to her. There isn't a thing mentioned in that story extreme enough for her to engage in any form of extreme violence, much less that. And honestly, if he had been a threat to her, she wouldn't have had the opportunity to do what she did. And I don't believe her when she says she regrets it. I think she's just saying she regrets it because this story went public.
yeah. Well, yeah, she got caught and it made the
Yeah.
news. It was an extreme case, so all right, but the real story is the reaction to the story, especially on X. So here we have a post from an account called Men Being Awful, which I suppose is like the counter to the Women Being Awful
Yeah.
X, account. And basically it's a rad fem account that in the description it says returning the same energy, supporting women, rad fem.
Oh,
So
good
returning
grief.
the same energy just screams like, oh, there's a woman being awful account. We're gonna be the opposite of that. We're gonna balance it out. So and Men Being Awful wrote as quoted the New York Post article and said he shouldn't have made a misogynistic comment. Men can't take accountability.
Yeah. Can you imagine if the Men Being Awful account posted something about an honor killing in some foreign country and said, well, the bitch shouldn't have slept with that guy, right? Women can't take accountability. Like that would have been pretty much the equivalent. This was, like I said, this was an attempted honor killing. She attempted to kill him for insulting her honor as a woman. That's what
Mm-hmm.
misogyny, quote unquote misogyny, is just women being offended that something that was said or done does not give women their due deference as the special sex. And that's basically, men insult each other like that all the time. They get back in the kitchen thing. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing compared to how men shit talk to each other. And if she couldn't handle that, she's very fragile. But the bottom video it says is cringe.
I don't know what the bottom video is.
I don't
Go.
know.
Yeah, no, just ignore
Um,
that. That's okay.
you got to come up with something better than that. Jeez, oh, Pete's. But yeah, it just that alone, that account would have been banned. And it probably won't be because, they don't care as much when people say stuff like that about men. But nobody deserves to be set on fire. I've had third-degree burns. I did it to myself by accident. It wasn't abuse. It was, I was a dumbass at the moment. But I've had third-degree burns, and it is an awful experience, even on a small area of the body. And I just can't imagine what this man went through. And, my heart really goes out to him.
Oh, his life's
I
over.
just, yeah, he really should move to he can't even move to a cold climate though, because Scar tissue, sometimes, especially if you've had nerve damage, it does two potential things that can be very adverse in cold situations. One is that it can feel the cold worse, and the other is that it doesn't feel it as much. And if you feel the cold worse, it's very uncomfortable. That's bad. But if you don't feel it when you get cold as much as you should, you can freeze to death before you realize anything's wrong. It's like the boiling frog thing, but with cold. It's extremely dangerous. So he's going to have to be, he's going to have somebody take care of him for the rest of his life. He can't be alone.
Yep.
And he's probably got scars that make it more difficult for him to not be alone. Like, more people are going to avoid him because they don't know what to say around the scars. It was just a horrible thing to do to him. The guy in the story I was talking about, the Reddit story, survived for 11 days before he passed away. And he lived with burn pain for 11 days. So that woman had tortured the guy to death. And there was this big debate, like, this guy did pretty much nothing wrong, right? I don't care that he said shit to her and that he was goofing around and trying to wrestle when she didn't want to wrestle. Like, that's not really that big of a deal. If she had decided she was going to leave the bar, he would have let her leave the bar. If she had decided, to ask security to calm him down, that probably would work too. She didn't have to do what she did. The debate in the subreddit over the pedo that was set on fire was, well, he was a horrible person, so he deserved it. Nobody deserves it. Right? He deserved, the guy that got burnt to death deserved to be in jail. And they really shouldn't have had a furlough program for him because he was a dangerous criminal. Shouldn't have been let out. But what happened to him was still wrong, and what the woman did was still wrong. And taking justice into your own hands is still wrong. And it's not self-defense at that point. It's not defense of an innocent person at that point. It's just ego, and that the thought that your own anger legitimizes doing something that you would call reprehensible if somebody else did it. And being angry doesn't justify that. So, like, that's one of the things where women project, right? Men can't take accountability, she says, but she thinks being angry justifies doing something that you'd call reprehensible if somebody else did it. Clearly, the person not taking accountability isn't the man in this situation.
Well, on top of that, though, too, this person, Men Being Awful, the account says he shouldn't have made a misogynistic comment. So what ultimately they're saying is that misogyny should be something that is illegal. There should be like legal consequences to men saying to women jokingly, get back in the kitchen. And I say it's I know it's jokingly because this isn't just some random guy. This is like an according to the article, an old friend of hers. So I have old friends, and we dunk on each other, we rag each other, whatever. Nobody goes and sets people on fire. So obviously, this is not like this guy did nothing to deserve. Even if she just did a general assault on him, if they know each other, then this doesn't make any sense. But this is not the end of this reaction. Okay, so here we go. We got some comments here, and they're relatively, it's polarized, which is wild. There is a lot of people on the side of this woman that this happened. You see that this has 54,000 likes.
Jeez.
From this account, Men Being Awful. Okay. 4,000 retweets. I don't know what counts as a ratio. I don't know what that means, but some people are calling it like rightfully rage bait. This one says this is a parody account, right? But no, I don't think it is. You see, teacher stabbed woman 15 times when she rejected him. And Men Being Awful said, have you ever noticed that men always escalate their reactions times 100? Meanwhile, woman sets man on fire for joking.
Yeah.
And this person says he should have said no, which is another like rad fem. Basically, it's this whole like, take on the rape culture thing where it's like, oh, well, why don't you just tell the man no, right? This is what she's doing, like a spin on that. He only had himself to blame. Who says that murder is not an art? I mean, these are psychotic responses from women on X, okay? It's
Is
literally
that
his
Marilyn
fault and he
Monroe?
faced the consequences of his actions.
Yeah, it's Marilyn
Uh
Monroe, isn't it?
no,
Yeah. No? Who is
that's
that?
Renee Zellweger. That's
Oh
just
God. Is that
she
her
might be
when she
she
was
might be
playing Marilyn
playing
Monroe?
she it might be. It might be.
It's one red flag. Um, how did my video get so dark?
I don't
Hang on a
know.
second.
Might be your
Probably the
camera.
light. Yeah, the light behind me probably got bright. One red flag that women hand out for free to you if you're, just getting to know a lady. If you see in any way, shape, or form that she identifies with Marilyn Monroe or a representation of Marilyn Monroe, run. Marilyn Monroe is a hot mess. Don't have anything to do with a woman who identifies with Marilyn Monroe.
Mhm. Okay, so more comments. It's Liam. It's literally his fault and he faced the consequences of his actions.
So
Whoa.
what's being argued there? A lot of what's being argued there is that nothing a man can do could be justified, right? But women have the right somehow to engage in extreme violence and potentially kill a man over words he said, right? Because he said the wrong thing. Right? Now, one of the stereotypes, one of the tropes that feminists like to promote about societal tolerance for abuse of women is that it used to be okay for a man to smack his wife around if she said the wrong thing, if she mouthed off to him or talked bad about him and stuff, which is not true. It was never really acceptable for a man to smack his wife around. But here we have all these people just fulfilling that trope in the gender reverse.
Yep. Charles says, men kill women for even pettier reasons, not mad at all.
Yeah,
No,
and
no,
again,
completely
same old tropes.
baseless, but baseless. Yeah. Alethea Dystopia, whose like I guess name includes a red heart, a bear face, which sounds like pedophilia to me. Female symbol, and some hearts. Just put a
Oh, wait,
cry
wait,
laugh
go back to
emoji.
her profile again. She thinks sex
Woman,
segregated spaces are human right.
turfy. I
So
support women,
yeah,
not parties. Okay.
yeah, but I wanna wonder, would she support rolling back the court rulings that women fought hard for, went to court for, um, to allow women into men's locker rooms and to allow girls into boys' sports? Would she support taking those things away from women? Would she support prosecuting women as sex offenders for using the men's restroom when there's a long line for the ladies? Not for any, desperation reason, just because they don't want to wait. Walking in on men who are exposed at urinals and didn't consent to being stared at, and I would say if she really thinks that sex segregated spaces are a human right, she should support prosecuting those women and stopping female reporters from going into men's locker rooms. You can always interview guys outside the locker
Mm-hmm.
room. You don't have to go in there. Nobody really should be going into the locker room. That should be, in my opinion, as a former athlete, that should be a safe haven for the athletes, and there should be a separate place to finally, interview the athletes. Let them have their damn showers in peace. But and men's clubs, like all the years that women sued to get into men's clubs and men's organizations that were organizations men had for recreational activities and just shooting the shit. The elimination of stag bars. For anybody who's not a boomer, a stag bar was basically a male only bar. They didn't tell women they couldn't come in. They just didn't make it comfortable for women. Like there might only be one restroom and it might not have a door. Things like that. Yeah, stag bars, they weren't fancy. For the most part, they were kind of just, the goal was to go in there and drink and maybe talk sports and read newspapers and play cards and shit, but you weren't going in there looking for chicks. You were just going in there maybe to get away from them for a little while, have some relief. And, all those places that women have eliminated men's sex segregated spaces, maybe we should start restoring those and allowing men to have their own spaces again, and tell women that, no, you can't sue to get in here because you believe that sex segregated spaces are human right, correct? So if men can't come into your spaces, you can't go into theirs either. You're going to have mixed spaces, and you can have your sex segregated spaces, and they can have theirs. But women don't leave it like that. Women want their sex segregated spaces, but they don't want men to have any time or place where they can get out from under female supervision and get away from female nagging and get away from female interference in everything they're doing. And so they sue, and they've been suing for 50 years. And now they're mad because it's starting to go the other way. Sorry, ladies, I got no sympathy.
Yeah. Scoutfinger shows, so apparently there are TikTok comments with this. Let's look at some of them. He couldn't fight back. Was he wearing something suggestive? So remember, these are feminists we're talking about. So their whole thing is trying to like make one story sound like something that they're supposedly fighting against that they made up in their head. So, but clothing is flammable. Surely he knew it would happen. Oh, okay. She's 24 and an athlete. She has a whole life ahead of her. Let's not ruin her life over one mistake. These are real serious comments. That's a Korean account right there. Probably one of those 4B hardcore feminists, right? I'm confused. Why didn't he run away? I'm confused.
Now stop there for a minute. So in the story, he egged her on. He was probably also drunk, right? He was probably also
on cocaine, maybe.
They're in it. Well, I don't know about whether he was on drugs or not, because when you go out partying with people, some people are into drugs and some people aren't.
Yeah.
Like, and I've been in groups of people where I was the only sober person too. So it's possible that he was the only. He might have been the designated driver, but egging her on was stupid. And feminists like to argue that nothing a woman does or doesn't do in a criminal perpetration situation is responsible for what makes them responsible for what the perpetrator did, and that's true. You can walk. You're not responsible for the perpetrator's choices, even if you walk half naked down a dark alley with cash hanging out of your pockets and a sign over your head saying, "I don't know what's going on around me." And then you get jumped and mugged and raped. That was still their choice. But you were vulnerable because you walked down that alley like that. And you had the experience that you didn't have to have because of your choices. Just like this guy made himself more vulnerable by egging her on. He didn't know when he egged her on what she was going to do, because people who are high and drunk can behave in an unpredictable manner. So that was stupid, but it's still just like, the point they're trying to make doesn't excuse the rapist's actions. And by the way, in society, it never has excused the rapist actions.
No,
we've never had that situation. It's always been something it's always been a feminist trope. It's always been a feminist lie. But we have seen people trying to excuse that woman's actions because he made her mad, which nobody makes you mad. You get mad because of your ego. All right. You get mad because you're offended at something. The only other time you get mad that's not because of your ego is because you're mad on someone else's behalf because they've been harmed and you value them. So she made herself mad over what he did. And that's the excuse people use. That's not his fault. That's her fault. And her actions are entirely her fault. And historically, when women are asked what they did or what they were doing at the time when they were raped or when they were assaulted, it's usually to try to figure out clues if they don't know who the perpetrator is, or ways to make the jury more sympathetic. You know, he got her when she was taking a bath, or, you know, he got her when she was unaware of her situation, or she was lost, or this was going on. And the same thing, they take your clothes when you go in and report, like, especially if you go to the hospital and you get a rape kit done, they take your clothes because they're looking for the rapist's hair and the rapist's bodily fluids, the rapist's like skin cells, fingernail bits. It's the same reason they scrape under your fingernails in case you scratched off bits of skin when you were fighting, right? It's the same reason they swab the inside of your mouth, right? They're looking for ways to prove the perpetrator was guilty. And women get offended by that, and they're like, oh, they're looking for clues that I was lying. No, they're looking for ways to make a case against the guy that did this to you. And these people getting upset about that and going along with the feminist lie, all they're doing is making other women afraid to go in and get that rape kit done and report to police that something happened to them, and go through the questioning process. Like, every piece of information you give the police after a crime helps them nail the perpetrator. And it's a real disservice to victims when they spread these myths.
Yeah, well, they're just trying to take something that apply, like this woman was partying hard with friends, and they were all horsing around. Most likely they're in their early 20s, everybody involved. She's obviously known these people well enough that she was comfortable with getting drunk and high around them. And
Yeah.
then because one guy got on her nerves, and I guess he like roughhoused a little bit, she sets him on fire. And the feminists in these comments are treating that the same as, you know, when women are investigating, or when police are investigating a sexual assault or something more severe involving a woman, and they're asking questions to understand the context. One of which is, you know, like what they're saying is like, were they wearing something suggestive? Which, by the way, doesn't really happen anymore. Like, I don't think it happens really. I think generally they just get the facts. They ask factual questions. You know, when did it happen? What were you wearing? What was he wearing? What does he look like, etc. And feminists think it's offensive. And the reason why is because ultimately their goal is to eliminate due process completely. They just want to be able to throw guys in jail for anything. That's all it is. Because if you can't gather information in order to investigate a crime or potential crime, part of the investigation of the crime, by the way, is leaving some room for the possibility that the woman is lying. Just like anybody. Like, if I just call 911 right now and I just say something's happening, the cops have a part of their due diligence is to make sure that what I'm saying is not a lie, because it costs money for police to investigate, and time and manpower, right? So feminists don't think any of that should exist. They think that women should just be believed wholesale all the time, that men should do, whoever they point the finger at should just be thrown in jail, that due process should not exist, you know, and that not even like the concept of preponderance of evidence would exist if it was up to them. I mean, you can just look at the Me Too movement as an example. So when these women are trying to point out this hypocrisy, which is completely like just factually incorrect in the way that they're applying it, what
It's
they're
all in their
trying to do,
heads.
yeah, it's all in their heads, but they're trying to craft a narrative on how they think the law should work. And they're making shit up so that it supports their position. That's all it is. So these people are not logical. They're not supposed to be. It's all a means to an end, right? So
Yeah.
when they say this, they're emotionally manipulating their audience, and they're trying to emotionally manipulate like all of you, anybody who sees it, into essentially doing something that we're already pre-programmed to do, which is essentially support women. So, all right. More comments from the TikTok. She has a promising future ahead of her. Hopefully this tiny little setback won't affect her. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's pretty much what was said about the lady that stabbed her boyfriend with a bread knife. They act like this is something that gets said about men. They act like this is something that is normal for when a man gets busted for doing something to a woman or gets accused. or like in the Brock Turner case, where the judge had a different opinion on his level of guilt than the jury did, and so gave him a lighter sentence, and it was based on his belief that he had consent, and they'll go ballistic about stuff like that, but I didn't see a single feminist speak out against that bread knife ruling where the attempted murderer. I mean, you stab somebody in the leg, you can hit the that would be the femoral artery, and that person can bleed out. Right? I always want to get it mixed up with the brachial artery. The brachial artery is in the arm, and the femoral artery is in the leg.
Then,
But they're
oh yeah,
both,
yeah.
yeah, they carry a shitload of blood. Is the
Mm-hmm.
point? She could have killed him, right? And the exact logic for her getting let off easy was that she had her whole life ahead of her, that she was young and smart and exceptional, and it would be a shame to waste her skills and talents. And nobody in the feminist movement came out and said this is wrong and it makes women look bad. But in the Brock Turner situation, where both parties were at the level of drunk where you lose the ability to appraise your actions, he was painted as a monstrous predator who did this out of malice and was dangerous to the community, and there is no excuse for his light sentence and for him getting out on good behavior and all that. And feminists showed up in his neighborhood, in his residential neighborhood, which at the time was here in the Dayton metro area, and brought guns that were powerful enough to shoot through brick and mortar, and had a protest march outside his home in his residential neighborhood where other people lived with their kids. And these are the same people, by the way, that probably protest against things like bump stocks. But they showed up with those kind of guns themselves. They want to be able to have them, but you can't. And so
Yep.
the hypocrisy is just insane, right?
Oh yeah.
It's just at an insane level, and the lack of awareness is at an equally insane level.
Mm-hmm. Jasmine says, I need to hear her side of the story. It was definitely an accident because she has a father and brothers. He shouldn't have gone there or been hanging out with her. But again, he was her friend. Like, why would you think, like, if your friend said, hey, let's go out for drinks, why would you say, oh, well, she is my friend. I've known her for years, but she just might set me on fire. Like, nobody's thinking that.
No.
Like, so to say like he shouldn't have gone, like, dude, he probably
What
thinks
she's
that
comparing
now.
to,
Yeah.
what she's comparing to is stories where, sex that may or may not have been consensual, and there's debate after the fact,
Yeah.
is deemed raped by one side, and the other side says, well, at the time she consented. Now she's saying she didn't. And of course, you need to hear both sides of the story in that instance, because one side is either lying or mistaken, and either a crime has been committed against the accuser, or the accuser is leveling a false allegation. And in some cases, there's been, like, I knew a gal who was convinced by friends that, well, not really friends, by her women's studies class, that instances that she engaged in multiple times at parties that she initiated herself while drunk, were instances where some guy raped her because she couldn't consent because she was drunk. And, there's a huge difference between attacking someone, like maliciously attacking someone, and looking at a circumstance where an individual's decision-making processes are skewed because of alcohol, and saying, well, did they really have the capacity to consent to that? It's a much more murky debate. And so what this woman, this Jasmine, is doing, if that's her real name, is she is trying to equate a straightforward attack that was malicious, that was an attempted honor killing, to the murky bog of consent while intoxicated. How intoxicated do you get before your consent is invalid? And can you initiate while intoxicated and still be said not to consent? Not an equivalent there. That's called a false
Right.
dichotomy.
The other thing to remember too is that after the incident and the police and everything, she said this is her defense. She pled guilty. So that's another
Yeah.
thing, that when she says I need to hear her side of the story, it's like no, she pled guilty. She said yes, I did this. And her reasoning was that she had a bad breakup in 2022, so like 3 years prior, and that for whatever reason she like never got over that guy. Now, this guy is from what I know,
Not the same guy.
that's not the same guy. There's no romantic, undertones. It's not a love interest. It's a friend, a male friend, and
No,
she
it
is
wouldn't matter if it was the
triggered.
same guy.
No, I know it wouldn't matter, obviously, but I'm saying it's not even that. Like you
Yeah.
couldn't even, but she's trying to make an emotional case. Like I was in a bad place because breakup, therefore I can set fire to people, and you should be sympathetic to me. And there are women that are sympathetic to that. It's almost like when we make laws, we have to disregard feelings. Like we have to, because if women made laws, they would do it on feelings. They'd be like, well, I didn't like this guy because he gave me the ick. Let's hang him.
Both of my parents passed away in 2021. I
Mhm.
have yet to set anyone on fire.
You haven't set
Right?
anybody on fire for that?
No,
Well,
I have not
you're
set anybody on
justified
fire.
if you decide to do it. So, because you're a
Yeah,
woman, you can just make the case.
there we go.
Yeah.
Like
Um,
I've had lots of bad breakups. Okay, I've had a shit ton of very bad breakups. I've never taken
isn't
3
it funny?
years to get over one, for one
Yeah.
thing, and for another thing, I don't think I've ever taken bad breakups out on anybody else, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe my bad breakups aren't like other people's bad breakups. It's just I feel bad about the way the breakup went every single time, no matter what it was. And years later I find out that the other person did too. Felt bad about how things went. But this is there is no excuse to engage in violence, right? To initiate violence. It's unprovoked. Even if you're angry, even if the person mouthed off to you, even if the person has something you want or took something of yours, it's unprovoked to be violent on your own towards this other person and engage in wrongdoing and harm just because you're offended, right?
Mhm.
It's only when somebody else is engaged in violence against you and you're defending yourself that your violence is justified. And then you want to use the least that you have to in order to get out of that situation, and then you leave the situation, you leave the environment and where that's what's happening. You don't continue to engage in violence. The only time that you should pursue this level of violence is if you're in a situation where somebody has made it impossible for you to stop them engaging in violence against you without going to this extreme level. And
Yep.
there's every excuse they're going to make, everything that they're going to say here. It's all going to be bullshit. There's no point at which feminists are going to have something to say about this, either as an excuse or as a look that we can say this thing and make this false equivalence. There's no point at which they're going to come up with an equivalent in the way that women are treated in society and female victimhood is treated in society. They're going to try, but it's never going to work because our society has compassion for female victims, right? If somebody did this to a woman in Australia, not only would it be national news, but there would be marches, there would be legislation introduced, there would be feminists making hay with it for decades. This incident happened.
Oh yeah, it would
Men
become
are evil,
there'd
you
be a
know.
TV show on Amazon. Like they would do, like
Yep.
it would be
It'd be a
everything.
made-for-TV movie here in the
Yep.
United States.
Yep.
The United States would have people doing protests and introducing legislation, and they'd probably name it after the victim, the burning victim. You know, like if her name was Susie, we'd have Susie's Law, and you know about, and then there'd be extra punishment if the abuse that you engage in against a person of the opposite sex, you know, when you're a guy, involves fire in any way or some such bullshit, and that's how it would go. And here we have people making jokes about it. Here we have people saying, well, he was asking for it because he said something misogynistic. Here we have people, you know, talking about it like it's the equivalent of things that are much more mild.
Yeah.
And feminists call that minimalizing, I think, where you equate an extreme act of violence with a mild act of violence and say, see, you don't like it when it happens to you, when in fact, you know, it's a lot worse what happened to him than what they're protesting against, right? There are stories like this that they could have compared it to, but these feminists don't understand and don't. They're probably not aware of them because they didn't happen in Western culture, right? There are bride burnings that took place in India, and it's something that happens to both sexes, but again, it gets cared about more when it happens to women. And there was a big push for changes in law and policy, partly because of those bride burnings. And now one of these women has mentioned that, right? Because it's not what's on their mind. The little minor issues of women having to prove their case when they want to accuse a man of rape, or evidence collection being uncomfortable. Sure, it's uncomfortable. It's you have to remember everything that happened when it's going on, but you know, in the end, if you get a conviction, it's worth it going through that. Because then, you know, you have the opportunity that this person may, you know, go through the prison system and be reformed. But yeah, they didn't have any of that on their mind. It's all the little things, because they don't pay attention to the big things. They don't really care about the big things, and they don't really care about gender issues that they're talking about. They only care about hating on men.
Yeah. It's like collective revenge for imagined slights. And yeah, so like if you see here, every time something like this happens, we're just supposed to presume that the victim, the male victim in this story, must have done something to deserve it, is not a good
Mhm.
person. Therefore, everyone's just kind of like post hoc rationalizing why she set a man on fire, and not just saying maybe she was fucking insane. Or just evil, like she just like bought into all the propaganda herself. Like it, you know, the fact that he was wrestling with her is like the excuse, like, oh, that wasn't wrestling, that was something more sinister. So it says here, this is more clips from Instagram about the story. Free her, somebody says. So they just want her freed, you know, like Luigi Mangione. And then someone says, and let him do the same thing to her, she is asking for it. So they're basically saying, if this was reversed, they would ask what she did to deserve it. Like that's something we even do. And then the last person says, free all the grapists with good reasons. So I mean, these are it's a pretty dark response. Here's another post. Let me show you guys here. This is from an account called Fuck It We Ball. And they said he told her to stay in the kitchen. So she literally cooked him. This diva. Oh, crying, but tears of joy that a man made a comment, a joke. And it wasn't even like, I mean, if you're going to get set on fire for a joke, you should just go all in, like, and say something really, like, really roast them before they roast you, you know? And we see the responses to this. OMFG, men joke about women suffering all the time in the name of dark humor. The second I flip the script to show the double standards, it's chaos. Y'all are the same ones who tell women it's just a joke. Don't take it so seriously. So this is the same person who made the account after, you know, basically getting like people saying, dude, this is really messed up. And she's like, I'm joking, guys. It's just a joke. I was just pretending to be retarded. Don't take it so seriously. So now laugh it off and move the F on.
Yeah, when men say
Skeletor,
don't
who
take it so seriously, it's a get back in the kitchen joke. When women say don't take it so seriously, it's a dick amputation joke, or a setting him on
yeah,
fire joke, or a stabbing him to death joke, or a pushing him over a cliff joke. You get the difference?
yeah, no, yeah, a little bit. I can kind of see what you're saying. There's a slight difference. It's slightly disproportionate. Skeletor says a woman high on cocaine. I should say it like him. A woman high on cocaine burned 55% of this man's body and scarred him for life over a bad comment he made while drunk. Yeah. So
That's
that's how I imagine
impression.
Skeletor would say it. That's like, and I, I love Skeletor. I agree with him. He's always
There we
on
go.
point. So, so anyway, um, and let's see. We can't let one mistake destroy her life. Plus, what was she wearing? What was he wearing? If he didn't want to be set on fire, maybe avoid flammable clothes. And has he even said others couldn't do it? So many unanswered
Not an
questions.
original thought in this bunch. Like, they've repeated
No,
that
they
one a bunch
all
of
do
times,
the same
right?
thing. Were clothes flammable? Because he's asking for it. It's like the
Yeah.
only thing these people have to go to, most of whom are feminist women, but some of them are men.
Yeah.
Is the fire going to therapy? What?
So they can't admit that the perpetrator was the woman, so they have to point to the thing that she used, the weapon that she used. Right? It'd be like saying, is the gun going to therapy? If
Oh,
we were talking about my experience.
yeah.
Is the gun going to therapy, instead of ignoring, or instead of talking about the perpetrators?
He was asking for it. I hope she gets a light sentence. He stirred things up, so he should be accountable too. He should be held accountable, guys. Forget the coma and the 55-degree like percent burns all over his body and the fact that he can't go out into the sun anymore. Forget that. He needs to
Yeah.
be held accountable for those words. This is like this is absolutely unhinged behavior. Absolutely unhinged. Okay. So men being awful, I wanted to go to the account. So there's another account called Women Being Awful, and this is the reaction to it. I just want to show you guys because I thought it was funny. So this one has 29,000 followers, 123 people following.
That means they're
Oh,
following
they're
123
following
people. Yeah.
123 accounts, yeah, and it's got 29,000 accounts. Women being awful.
So they don't follow back, obviously.
No, I guess not. No, they don't. They don't. Women being awful has way more followers. And the thing is,
Now
it's also
they
the
can't
context of
follow
this.
back.
This is interesting. Men being awful, it's at Pink Cells, which by the way, when you say I had a bad breakup, therefore I deserve to set somebody on fire, that sounds like the kind of talk that feminists would accuse incels of engaging in, even
Yeah,
though
Pink
incels
cells.
don't engage in it, right?
By the way,
Um,
pink cells would be like fem cells, or some other name for the mythical female incel. But there are no female incels. There are only women who think that they're too good for the men that they merit.
Yes, there is no such thing as a female incel. There are absolute beasts that can get laid if they're willing to lower their standards.
Mm-hmm.
And men have none almost. I mean, like at least a lot of them. So anyway, this one in the description it just says returning the same energy, supporting women, rad fem. So this is like support women blanket, okay? And they live in Misandry area. So they're open with what their belief system is. If you look at women being awful, it's actually very specific. It just says women are amazing, just not these women. Actual cases of women being horrible, memes,
Yeah.
cringe, and more. And so, like, this is actually a much more fair and balanced, account. Maybe even a little bit too fair, but because you don't have to. I personally, it really annoys me when people have to say, "I think women are amazing," but let me make this criticism. It's like, dude, shut up. Like, we get it. People are people. There are good people, there are bad people. Most people are a mixed bag. You don't have to do that. You don't have to open up with here. By the way, guys, I'm not sexist. Well, okay, now
Well,
is
and
that
I'm gonna
understood by
point
everybody?
out
Okay, now
something.
I'm gonna say my piece.
I'm gonna point out something. Like, all of civilization was built by men. stop saying women are amazing.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just really, it irritates me because I know what people are doing is they're covering their ass. And the fact that we have to go around covering our ass before we open our mouths to state an opinion just shows how like feminine the entire world is, that we have to be like, okay, look, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
say something. It has nothing to do with you.
Frank Aguilar has a pertinent statement. So the women who have common sense are amazing. I'll agree with that because there aren't very many.
No,
So,
they're not.
and I try to have common sense, but I've noticed, it's actually a challenge in modern society because we are encouraged to not have any common sense at all.
Yeah.
And common sense is a male characteristic.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. So, let me go back to this. I mean, we're almost at the hour, which is when I wanted to wrap it up. But is there anything else about this you want to say? Allison made some comments to me. She said, I just want to point out the most egregious part of this. Women are treating this like a teachable moment for men. They're saying, see, this is what it's like when men say, what was she wearing? But people who say that aren't actually excusing rape, nor are they saying the men shouldn't be punished. They're also wrong. Clothing doesn't play a part in being targeted. It's essential, humiliating. It's essential to humiliate men as unable to help themselves like animals. Another argument I dealt with is feminists who say the existence of shitting men meant women couldn't be shitty to men. Well, that's because feminists are like other leftists. They argue from this position of it's not individual people that do bad things, it's a systemic thing. So they basically believe in collective guilt for certain groups of people based on the progressive stack. So
Well, have you
men
noticed?
are a collective that deserve
Yeah.
collective guilt and collective
I was
shame.
going to say, have you noticed that whenever feminists are talking about a man doing something bad or men doing something bad, all men are responsible for it and all men are responsible for putting a stop to it, and everything about the situation is collective. But when a
Mm-hmm.
woman does something like this, it's you can't generalize it to all women. And she was acting on her own, and what she did may have been reprehensible, but it's rare that women do anything like this, and blah 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 blah. And you could even point out statistics proving all of that wrong, that there are collective attitudes that women have toward men that facilitate this type of behavior, that women collectively approve when this type of behavior happens, and they make light of it, and they excuse it and stuff like that. And that actually this type of violence, female violence against male victims, is more common, and it's not always just a slap. Like feminists like to, when you talk about female violence against men, they like to say, well, he shouldn't be responding to just a slap with a whole beatdown. This was not just a slap. If he had then given her a whole beatdown, would they have said, well, that was uncalled for, or would they have acknowledged that he was defending himself? And this is a situation. They have an excuse for everything, and they have a condemnation for everything that men do, everything that men don't do, everything that men are, everything that men are not, and everywhere men are, and what they do and are not and don't do in every place. So I have no sympathy for feminist rhetoric on this. They really don't have anything of value to add to the conversation. And honestly, men should just ignore them, and that includes male legislators, and deal with these subjects with feminists just screaming outside and being unrequited in their feelings about the situation, because they really don't have anything worthwhile to say, and they don't have anything worthwhile to listen to. Nothing that they're going to say is going to contribute functionally to any changes in law and policy or any changes in culture. So fuck them.
Yep. Lars von Queer in the responses to the story says, I'm a misandrist, and I thought this was this way too until I read the case. It was gruesome and horrific. I don't think it's a win to sink to men's level of violence. So
Sink
this
to men's level of violence. Are you
well,
kidding me?
they opened with saying I'm a misandrist. So like this is something you can wear like a badge of honor, I guess. Yeah, I hate men, and I think this is bad because this woman is sinking to men's level of violence.
When Deborah Pani did her study on men's experience of coercive control, she ran into men whose abusers had poured boiling water on them while they were sleeping, had beaten them with iron skillets, had stabbed them, had threatened to stab them, had poisoned them, had threatened to poison them, had threatened to poison their children. You got to be kidding me. Stoop to men's level of violence. Like, women have never engaged in this type of stuff throughout history. That's, again, bullshit.
Yep. Well, yeah, so basically this is a little bit of a black pill in a way. I mean, like you got this is the funny thing, like when these people, I think they watch too much TV. Because if you watch TV, they glorify women's violence because they always make it seem like it's righteous, necessary, and inevitable. And so
Yeah.
when it happens in real life, then when people are like, "Oh, well, that was a girl boss moment." And it's just attempted murder. I mean, I don't know what Australia is going to land on. This is an Australian case, but in
Yeah.
my view, she didn't like, if she didn't like the situation, she didn't try to leave. She went and got gasoline, came back, poured it on him, and set him on fire. That was premeditated. That was intentional, and that almost killed this man. Like, I
You have
mean,
to remember
his life is never going to be the same.
Australia is the country where the guy's abusive girlfriend killed him, cut him up, cooked him, and attempted to feed him to his children.
Yes. Yes. This is what I'm saying. But that's stooping to men's level of violence, apparently. I don't know, man. I don't know. So anyway, we're gonna wrap it up here. But do you have any final thoughts on this before we close it out?
Yeah, it's just typical feminist fare. Like, they can't take responsibility for anything. They can't take responsibility for their rhetoric. They can't take responsibility for influencing women to feel comfortable engaging in violence instead of, like, the best way to address violence between the sexes is to take that taboo that men face against being violent toward women and make it go both ways, right? If women had the same taboo, there would be many fewer incidents of violence between the sexes because women have a habit of initiating it. And if both sexes had to negotiate with each other and actually be, willing to compromise and have compassion for each other, think of each other as human beings, kind of like tradition, like history, like real tradition, then maybe there wouldn't be so much violence in the world.
Yeah, maybe. We just have to treat
Yeah.
people like adults. Like if we're essentially what's happening is we're asking that women be treated like adults when they're adults. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Which,
don't go off setting people on fire because they upset you. That's not just childish, that's barbaric and primitive. You're
and
supposed to be like a woman in the first world.
according to feminists, suggesting that we should treat women like adults is probably the most misogynistic thing you could say. So if you smell gasoline or anything, watch out for angry women, I guess.
Yeah,
At
definitely
least
look
you're
out for
not in
that.
Australia. Like, Australian feminists are holy shit. They're
Yeah,
bad. Yeah.
it's bad there. All right. Well, thanks, Hannah, for coming on the show. Thank you guys for watching. We're gonna wrap it up there. If you guys want to check out the thread on X, I put it in the description of this video. Maybe you can put a reply or whatever, contribute your 2 cents. It'd be nice to see more pushback on this because this is kind of ridiculous. So, but anyway, with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, to the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today. I look forward to seeing your thoughts on that. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of, well, whatever this is, me and Hannah responding to absolute insanity on the internet. Till next time.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.